Here for two short sessions, Susie lightning talk, and then Farah Nayeri will join us with Amos Gitai. To set the tone, I spoke about this room this morning. The one thing that I didn't mention, because I wanted to mention it now, is that this is the room where the first défilé started, along with Palazzo Pitti over the river, and this room at St. Regis was the first fashion walk. And the rest is history, as they say. And I thought this was an appropriate way to start with Susie Menkes. How do you introduce someone like Susie? I've known you for 10 years. We've done great work with the Luxury Conference. We're delighted that you're here. Ladies and gentlemen, Susie Menkes, the legend.
I'm going to talk to you about something slightly surprising. It's about fashion's artistic obsession. It's something that I've come up against in my many years, nearly 50, of writing about fashion. And really, it's something that I think about a lot because of the way things have moved during that period. And the big question that I bring is this: is fashion fashion if you cannot actually wear what is defined as clothing? Over the years, I've been presented with so-called fashion shows when the garments are deliberately unwearable. That might have meant beautiful but incomprehensible creations offered by Rei Kawakubo for Comme des Garçons, or it could be something funnier, like the late Vivienne Westwood building her fame by putting young model Naomi Campbell in sky-high platform shoes that definitely weren't made for walking. She fell down immediately. Among so many others, from student inventions of plastic dresses circling the human form to applied art presented in a museum, comes this question, and I think about it often. Is it fashion if you cannot carry out normal life wearing it? Let's put it in another way. Is fashion's artistic obsession anything but smoke and mirrors in fabulous, fashionable colors? Of course. The answer may seem easy, obvious even, yet the very same people who admire and wear complex clothes often have a similar attitude to art as they do to unwearable clothing. I mean by that you don't have to be really able to hang a painting formally on the wall. You might think of art as something defined by statues and sculpture, by buildings, and what might be just broken shards, but they're still called art. But when the subject of art, and that includes wearing a jacket with 3 sleeves, how can you accept it? There are unwearable trousers, perhaps, stitched together, but anything that you can't actually and properly wear and use your body inside it, is it fashion? Is it art? What is it? After so many years in the fashion trenches, I still feel a slight discomfort when viewing clothes that are arty awkward, and some of them unbearable. And now men are following this, sometimes even leading it, the weirdly unwearable. The art world arena today can be seen as an area without boundaries. It can be seen as a home for the trans and non-binary creative communities. I'm thinking of Fantastic Toiles and Jenkin Van Zyl, who are exploring the potential of a fashion voice. It is also a non-judgmental mode of expression. I look in museums at garments worn in the distant past, those ridiculously elongated men's breeches or women's dresses so wide that she needed to turn sideways to get through the palace door. Is that fashion? I'm not sure. Coming up in the merry month of May, Prince Charles of the not-so-United Kingdom will don clothes that, like the event itself, will be ripe with history. These outfits and the grand carriages that will house the wearers cannot be considered harbingers of the future, obviously. But by contrast, are any of the people eager to take part likely to wear anything except exceptional or ordinary clothes? They won't be extraordinary, that's for sure. And that applies to so many of today's choices around the world. Then I think of those very few who are prepared to do something brave with what they wear. I think about Pharrell Williams' wife Helen at the New York Met Gala, not this one, which hasn't happened yet, but in 2017. The theme that year was, wait for it, Comme des Garçons. So Helen wore to the dinner a red avant-garde com outfit with no outlet for her arms or hands, nothing, all for the sake of art. She couldn't have had a thing to eat. We are unlikely to find weird clothes at next week's Met Ball, the Dress to Look Famous event, this time dedicated to the late Karl Lagerfeld. He, incidentally, was famous for producing formality in his designs for Chanel and for Fendi. I can never actually remember Karl making clothes that were what we define still as unwearable. Nor will I think there be weird garments at the French film celebrations in Cannes. But I was thinking about it, and I do know where to find utterly original things. There was another British offer with creatives at the famous fashion schools offering extraordinary colours and shapes and fabrics. And there's the artist, Grayson Perry. I do admire him so much, not just for his work, but for his fine example of wearing the creations of St. Martin's students as a means of self-expression. So good to see somebody who has succeeded trying to help those who are young and hoping for the best. Is there anything new? Everything. Anything wearable for a simple life, for the normies out there. That's more difficult. So how to cope with fashion as invention? By far the most intriguing offers are nothing that you would hang in the cupboard or lay on the bed. When I look around in front of me, I see nothing but people who are dressed in what we would all think of as normal clothes. Nobody has come here, as far as I can see, without being able to put their arms through the jacket. We're talking about choosing a digital image to merge with oneself, a new dress through AI, and it could be presented at the metaverse as an enthusiastic new look. But with no use of fabrics, no stitching, no dyeing, and absolutely no waste. Is that the metaverse, the future, about the way we are going to cover ourselves and wear clothes? Could it really, really happen? Well, it is happening in the digital world, right here, right now. How much more will things change in my lifetime? That's a question I ask myself. A dramatic alteration has already begun. I'm trying to envisage a world without clothes as we know them, with enormously extraordinary things that could not ever really be worn, or just something that isn't really clothes at all, but is cast with a colour, the body is cast with a colour or a shape. Is it possible? It's certainly possible, even if it doesn't see my lifetime. But I must admit, and I don't know how many of you feel the same, I'm not quite ready yet. Perhaps you are. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, so pleased to be back up here, and this time with one of Israel's most prominent personalities. Amos Gitai, filmmaker, artist, writer, thinker, and all-around polymath, I think we can say, safely. This is a conference on art and culture. So initially I thought, and if you could please keep your voices down, because we really need to hear Amos. Initially, I thought, this is a conference about art and culture, and I need to keep politics out of it. But then, he's a man from Israel, and I'm a woman from Iran. I don't know if you've heard of the Woman Life Freedom Movement, but that's basically what it boils down to. So it's going to be hard for him and me not to touch on politics. So Amos has had a few words of biography, a life of privilege on the one hand, and I would say a life of trauma on the other, as is the way with humankind. He was born into an intellectual family. His father was an architect who studied at the Bauhaus with people like Mies van der Rohe and Kandinsky, and who died when Amos was a soldier in the regular Israeli army. Amos himself became an architect, and he got his PhD from Berkeley. Then he went back to Jerusalem. During the 1973 Yom Kippur War, he was called up as a reservist in a helicopter rescue crew, and the helicopter was hit by a missile. He himself was wounded quite severely, and the pilot of the helicopter was decapitated. So it's a wonder that we have Amos here with us tonight on this podium. And since we do, I wanted to say, Amos, that's trauma on a pretty exceptional level. That is off the charts trauma. So my first question, I'm sorry to ask a kind of a little bit of a tough one to start with, but I wanted to ask you how you think your life, your trajectory, your career as a great, great filmmaker have been affected by this extraordinary trauma. And clearly, I think it made you a different person, but I'd like to hear you say it. And if we could please keep the talking to a minimum, please.
So, Farah, first I'm delighted to speak to you. You know, I think that the arts are a way to cross borders, the stupidity of fences dividing people. And if the artists will not do it, who will do it? If we wait for the politicians, we'll wait a long time. So we have to speak our truth. I consider my work essentially as a civic gesture. I liked a lot what Dana Dajani said before. Dana, thank you. And we have to keep memory. So you want me to work like on my own psychotherapy sofa, but I will do it. So I was, as you mentioned, I was a son to an architect and intellectual woman. My mother was born in Palestine in 1909, so it's still the Ottoman Empire. And I think that the wedding of my parents was in Baalbek in Lebanon. So already in my childhood, on the little table, there were two little simple train tickets which said very simply, Haifa, Beirut. So as a child, I asked her, but how come you put Lebanon is an enemy country? She said it was possible, and one day it will be possible. And I think this sense of optimism, of not prejudging the future by the present condition, is central. The war, you know, my job in the Yom Kippur was to collect people who have been burning in tanks and killed, show what a kind of a waste is the war and the brutal conflicts of the Middle East, you know. Death, wounded, decapitated, throwing away all the resources of this beautiful, important region instead of building something viable. So I think that it probably did not change me so radically, but it underlined. As we have friends from Berkeley, right? So it's really nice to reconnect thanks to this beautiful conference. So I think that coming back after it, and I was still studying architecture. I kept studying architecture, did my PhD in Berkeley, like you mentioned. But after I collected all the proper academic stamps, I said, now I'll do something different. I will speak about the destiny of this region. I did a very big project, which will be in the coming Biennale, about the Dajani family. Dana, you should come.
Yes, I'm going to be asking you about that next. But before we go to that, I thought, Amos, if you could kind of explain to me why you decided to take the road of film, because you could have been a writer. I mean, that's what I do. You could have written books. You could have, you know what I mean? There are 100 ways you could have gone.
I mean, I consider, and I want to insult colleague architects, that it's a bit of formal exercise, and that I want to touch an exposed nerve of my dear countrymen. Sometimes it didn't bring me only friends, but I thought it's necessary. We have to keep, you know, I don't consider memory sentimental or nostalgic. I think it's a way to keep a trace. Now we have a very problematic powers in Israel, and I think that it's very important to keep a trace that something else is possible.
Yeah, and you do that more effectively with film, isn't it? It's a very immediate thing.
I do it with anything I can. I did theater, I do film. I'm going to do something at the next Biennale. Yeah. So at this stage of my life, I feel free to do what I feel like doing.
Yeah, a little parenthesis before we move on to this project called House, which is so important. I wanted to ask you what you thought of this whole streaming thing, because
I think it's technology. You know, the important thing is to do good works. And as I said, I think that. And we are in a session about art, is to do things which have civic dimension, not demagogic, not instrumental. Let's not forget a painting called Guernica, that you may have heard about it, right? No? You heard about the Guernica? So I consider that Picasso did it in 1937 when he saw the bombardment of the Luftwaffe on this village. His medium is painting, so he did a painting. And perhaps it's the most well-known, I mean, obviously he did the low works. So it is a civic gesture. And I think in the basis of the arts and the role of the artist, you know, in African terms, I would say we are supposed to be a kind of shaman to heal the wounds of the suffering, of the destruction. And I think that that's a very... and we should choose the medium which is the most effective. Cinema is effective, so.
So that's a new definition to the question of this conference. What are the arts for? The arts are for shamanism. Lots of shamans here today, I guess. So Amos, let's move on to this absolutely seminal work that you did called House. And this is a film that was actually taken in several stages. It's about a house in West Jerusalem that was owned until 1948, which is the partition, the creation of the State of Israel, by a Palestinian gynecologist. Then there was a terrible massacre called the Deir Yassin massacre, and this gynecologist left this house. And I think his name was Dajani. So I think Dana Dajani, who we saw earlier, might be related to this.
Sure. It's a big tribe, the Dajanis, yes, as you know.
Yes, so everything connects. Then the government of Israel settled Algerian Jews in this house. And 40 years ago, I believe, a well-known Israeli economist moved the Algerian Jewish family to a mass public housing project and then turned it into a villa. So this house in itself is sort of like a microcosm of what's happening in Israel and between Israel and the Palestinians. It's sort of like a metaphor, isn't it? It's a microcosmos, as you call it.
I think I agree, you know, in your conversation prior to this one with Andreas, I liked that he said that we need a project, right? So I think that the fact that we speak about a restrained territory, we don't speak about the entire Middle East, the entire Israeli-Palestinian relation, but we take one house and we just take the story of this house. And on this house, on this stage, one can say, all the protagonists, the Mahmoud Dajani came as well, and the Palestinian workers, and the new owners, and each one tells a piece of the biography, and the juxtaposition of these different fragments tell us something concrete about this house, but kind of a metaphor of Jerusalem. A bit like, since I love Joyce, it's a bit like the way he was dealing with Dublin and so on. So this film I did in 3 times. I did it 43 years ago. It's considered to be my first film. And then 18 years later, I came again. And then 25 years later, the Dajani family suggested I go to visit a relative in Amman. And I went to see the family. So it's a triptych, yeah.
Yeah, if you go on YouTube and you look up House, I think there's a version that was on Rai 3. If you speak Italian or can read Italian subtitles, you can watch it there. Otherwise, you can contact Amos's assistant and get the Vimeo code to watch it. That's how
Absolutely. You're welcome.
It's a beautiful film, but I mean, I'm also kind of intrigued that, let's think about it here for a moment. You are an architect by training, right? Your father was an architect, and your first movie is called House, and it's about a house. You don't think there's a connection there?
There may be. You may be right.
Yeah, I'm trying to be the psychotherapist here.
Good.
Yeah. So Amos, this house is something that's been obviously a movie, but you're also creating plays out of it, installations, all kinds of things. Can you talk about it, because you're taking it to the Venice Architecture Biennale?
I mean, we finished a play which was in Paris, and we'll go to the Barbican in London. It's also called House. And it's ending with a beautiful poem of the great Palestinian poet Darwish, Mahmoud Darwish, which is called Think of the Other. And on stage, it was a very moving experience of having Israeli actors, Palestinian actors, Iranian fantastic santur player, a Russian immigrant to play violin. So all these people that supposedly are fighting each other in the Middle East were there to create together. And as you know, creating is much more complicated than negotiating politically. It's a sensitivity, it's a rhythm. The Middle East have different rhythm than the Speedy Gonzalez editing. So it was really an incredible discovery for all of them. They are kind of in love. They cannot stop writing to each other, even now it's over the Paris presentation. And so Leslie Loco, who is the chief curator of the coming Venice and a very significant thinker from Ghana, she suggested that I participate, and we're doing something at the coming Biennale.
You know, when I hear you talk, it reminds me of the East-Western Divan Orchestra created famously by Daniel Barenboim, who's a maestro I absolutely worship, and being a musician myself, and Edward Said, the late Edward Said. And this, do you know about this East-West Orchestra?
Sure. Yeah. You know, I did a big film on the assassination of Rabin. Yeah. And Barenbaum was kind enough to record some, and we went to Berlin to record with him. I think that all these gestures, which are on one hand good art, so they're not just propagandistic art, they're really profound, good art, and at the same time they're profound dialogue, they're important, they're really necessary.
We have about 15, 16 minutes left. I'm going to carry on talking here, but I realize it's an incredible privilege to be able to ask questions of Amos. So I would like to share the privilege with you. If you have any questions, please do raise your hand, and I will happily request a microphone for you. Yes, we'll have a question here, and then I'll chat with them again. Please, could we have a... Thank you.
Hi.
Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Gemma Israelson, and I'm the head curator at Shifting Vision. Shalom Ya'arat. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your thoughts on the recent protests in Israel and what it says to you about a larger unifying spirit of Israelis who are more factioned in different ways that the outside world doesn't see than you could ever imagine. But I think what we've seen in the recent weeks is kind of an ongoing, large-scale unification of people from many different religious and socioeconomic backgrounds. And I'd just love to hear your thoughts on it as an Israeli.
That was going to be my next question.
Sorry.
I am very proud of it. I'm very proud that it's a kind of a wake-up call of complete sectors of the Israeli society who are preoccupied. Where shall we have dinner? To which island shall we spend the summer? And so on. And now they're waking up, they're marching in Tel Aviv. They do not want it to become a dictatorship. They understand the power of the dangerous fusion between Orthodox religion, which is excluding everybody else, ethnocentric, and right-wing, but extreme right-wing thinking against anyone else who is not Israeli Jewish. So I'm proud of this sector of the Israeli society, and it is a necessary stage. I hope, I'm not religious, so I'm not sure I want to say I pray, but let's say I will pray for their success. It is important that they will stop this nonsensical, racist government to win. So, kol hakavod, all the best, When I'm there, I'm going there. And also, good. Also, I showed some friends, there was also a very moving other event. A couple of days ago, it was the Israeli Day of Independence. And I was among the people who went to a joint Israeli-Palestinian Memorial Day for the dead, which are on both sides. So let's accept other narratives, not just us. Otherwise, we will be stuck for another hundreds of years. So I think all of that are important events for the contemporary history of Israel.
Speaking of going on for another hundreds of years, once we get over Netanyahu, do you think that there will be...
Are you sure we'll get over?
Well, I don't know.
This guy, even if he's dead, I would go and check if he's really dead,
Yeah, he kind of came back from the dead, because I heard you talk about him, a year or two ago when there was a coalition government that was not at all of that stripe. And you were saying Netanyahu's gone, but he might be back. Yeah. And he is back.
No, it's actually, since we're in a culture session, it's actually, I want to disappoint you. Culture is not immuning. It's not immuning. Netanyahu is more...
Immunizing, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, Netanyahu is more cultivated than his rivals, the other guys of the opposition. He read history. I'm sure he swallowed Machiavelli. So the guy is problematic because he's not stupid. He's more smart than his friends, Bolsonaro, Trump, and so on. And that's why he's even more dangerous, because he's a manipulator on a good scale, and we have to be very prudent dealing with him and not accepting any intermediary solutions some people are proposing it. We should go until all these racist laws are out. There is no intermediary solution. It's like you cannot choose between the good and the evil. You have to make a choice. And we have to make the choice. And it's not true that we will lose, It's not true.
You think a majority of Israelis will choose good over what you describe as evil?
It's technical. He has a technical majority in the parliament, not a big one. The opposition lost by 3,000 votes, but they fought each other, disproportional egos, political stuff, and they lost, and he controls the parliament, and so since I worked a lot on not just the killing of Rabin, but the incitation to kill Rabin, and I saw because I got the videos of all the campaign that was done at the time, so I'm saying that this guy, we have to be prudent, And also on the cultural sphere, it's bringing a very revisionist visions of what is the contemporary history of Israel. We have to fight for keeping the memory. And the memory is not innocent. You know, I don't believe that the planet only moved by machine guns and money. The planet also moved by ideas. So let's not be shy, speak about ideas, you know.
Great, let's speak about ideas and move away from politics. The idea behind this conference is, of course, that art can be a way forward. And through the traumas we've been through, whether political or disease or whatever. And what do you think of really the power of art? I mean, I would like you not to give, and I'm sure you won't give, a woolly answer. I would like maybe specific examples of maybe works that you did, like House, like the Rabin movie, which is extraordinary, that they had an impact, you know.
So I want to disappoint you a bit. I don't think the art changed the reality. I do not think. And even between you and me, I do not like films like Michael Moore, when he manipulated too much, because then when I see a manipulative work, I start to be suspicious, you know. And then I even suspect ideas. I agree with him politically, but I disagree with him artistically. When you show a good cause, why do you need to manipulate so much? Why do you need to show Bush like that and a bomb like that, you know? I don't need it, you know. But the arts, I don't think they change immediately. But they keep a trace of the memory, and this is not nothing, you know. If I go for a second to the Guernica, so Picasso didn't win, you know. Franco stayed in power. The fascists are still. There is a resonance even today that it's a democracy. But you ask yourself, I think several years ago there was a social democrat elected the prime minister of Spain. And what did he put at the top of his priority? Do you remember?
The graves of the fascists?
Yeah, he wanted to take out the bones of Franco from this kitsch mausoleum. And you ask, why? Why is it the priority? It's only because of memory. If artists, militants, poets, writers did not do their job, it will not happen. So I think we have to keep these traces, and the traces would make the work.
Do we have another question from the room? Yes, we have a lady in the back. Yes, please.
Yes. If you say that art have to keep trace of memories, I think archaeological museum also has this role of keeps traces of our history, memories, and they become a kind of guide for the future.
You are, yeah, can you introduce yourself again? You are Elisabeth de Porzampar, the architect, are you not?
And so this morning I was speaking about my musical archaeological museum, and I would like to say, speak about a word in Hebrew word, kadima, because kadima contains it means the future, but it contains the root kedem, the past, and I think in the even way that in my museum, archaeological museum, I'm building the future with this memory of the past, of the trace of the past. I think in your work, when you are speaking about keep the traces of memories of the past, you are also building the future, because people can take lessons about your work also, about this past.
And I think that the oeuvre of Amos is an illustration of that, because everything in there is about not memorializing, but preserving the memory of. Amos, to go back to the issue of how useful art can be, because we're all here trying to answer that question. I'd like to go back to that with you. You spoke about Guernica, and you rightly said, well, Guernica, when he made it, it didn't actually stop the Civil War. So can you talk a little bit about art that's being made today, contemporary art, any kind of art form, not just your own, but others, that you think might be having some kind of impact on, you know, how we feel about the world? Or
I mean, I'm not so knowledgeable as you think, you know, so... And I always say that I like to cultivate my ignorance, you know, because I'm a curious person, so I like to discover something that I do not know. Also, I work with great actresses, Juliette Binoche, Natalie Portman, Jeanne Moreau, the greatest Jeanne Moreau. And each time I work with somebody, I like to discover the personality. Also, Yam Abbas, the Palestinian, Yael Abekassis, the Israeli, you know, great artist. So I cannot give you a summary of it. I think that probably there are a lot of gallerists and know better than me. I have myself a gallerist, which is a good one, Tadeusz Ropak. But I think that the art world was taken too much by commercial aspects, and they have to go back to the essence. So I was very happy that Ropak got the work of Beuys, you know, Joseph Beuys, who tried in some sort of very crude way to deal with the German history, you know. I mean, I did some work with Pina Bausch. I think she was incredible inspiration to what I do, because she tried to create a bridge beyond this terrible period of the Third Reich. I think that Fassbinder, among the directors, tried the same. I think there are the three big figures. I spoke to Andreas before, and I told him that my father, because he loved this language, you know, the rapture for German Jews, the brutal rapture was terrible. And
your father was a German Jew, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was an Ostjuden, it's even worse, you know. But he was, while shaving in the morning, he used to speak to himself Hochdeutsch, because he wanted to hear the sound of the language. So I think that I think we have to go back to the essence of what is the gesture of creating art. You know, what is the engagement which is involved in it? Again, not indoctrinary or demagogic, but pure, strong works. And I'm happy I didn't end in this crash of helicopters, that I have the pleasure to be talking to you in
I'm
Florence,
delighted.
you know.
We're all delighted. We have a couple of minutes left, maybe two minutes left. Amos, I wanted to know what your next big thing is, because you're a man of, as I said, a polymath. You could be doing 100 things. What's the next 100?
So yesterday I came from Venice. They're installing the house, the continuation of the house. The house will go elsewhere. In Pompidou, I will do something. You know, this year is 50 years to the Kippur War, and it's the only moment in my life that I did some drawing for 1 month, and then I stopped. And they will show some of them in the Pompidou.
Are your drawings good?
I don't know. But apparently they want to show them. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, I will look forward. I will be in Paris to look at them. And
you are all invited. It will be the 20th and the 21st of this month of May in the Pompidou, the beautiful gallery. And we'll also do, I call it the War Requiem, and we will do a piece by Britten, the
Benjamin Britten.
The War Requiem, Lacrimosa with Nathalie Dessay and a choir will do. So it's a performance presentation. You're all invited, 20th, 21st of May at the Pompidou. So I think that talking of, you know, the moment I did the film on the war, it was 27 years after the incident. The film was shown in Cannes in the year 2000. The war was 73. And people ask me, why do you, now we speak about peace? So I said, let's not forget what is war. so we can make peace, you know. So I think that it's good, again, you have to be a bit, art has also a quality, music also of, since you are into music, of obsessive, repetitious variation on a theme. So I'll try to keep doing it, you know.
The great thing about having someone like Amos is that he wraps up the talk for you beautifully. Thank you very much, Amos. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
When you introduce yourself, sorry, I'm on the mic. That's fine.
So we alternate.
Yeah. Looks nice.
Okay, great.
We swapped around.
She insisted. She insisted to. I wanted to be
Okay.
forgotten on the far
Doesn't
right.
seem to be working. Yeah, so. Good afternoon. NFTs, the moment we've all been waiting for. Can everyone hear me okay? That's good. Well, Achilles, in his welcoming remarks yesterday, said he was really looking forward to learning all about NFTs in this panel. I don't think he's going to learn that much from me. This is my phone. But fortunately, I have three tremendous panelists who know a lot about this stuff. And unusually, as it's actually really very technical, or a lot of it is technical, unusually I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves with just a very brief introduction about who they are and what they do. Audrey, do you want to kick off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Audrey O. I'm the CEO and co-founder of TR Lab. We're a platform that's a global curated platform fusing NFT technology with fine art. Our mission is to onboard the next generation of art enthusiasts to participate, learn, and collect art through digital-first experiences based on the blockchain.
Michael.
So Michael Zancan, I'm an artist now, an NFT artist, I would say, since 2 years ago. I started to be an artist very early, and I was doing painting for about 15 years. But also I was a programmer, and I've done my career into programming. And when I discovered about NFTs 2 years ago, I really jumped in and discovered a new world, like a blank canvas to explore, and really engaged in NFTs, and I became, in the span of 1 year, the top-selling artist on the blockchain Tezos. And it's been quite a journey, yeah.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor for me to be here. Good afternoon. I'm Serena Tabacchi, and I'm a curator of digital art. I've been in the space for quite some time, since, NFTs were a word that nobody in the room knew what that stand for. I've helped a number of artists getting to learn about technologies through an organization I co-founded called MOCTA, Museum of Contemporary Digital Art. Prior to that, I was at the Tate, and since then I've been curating shows here in Florence at Strozzi, and now in Rome about the metaverse. So,
Fantastic, thank you. I think with this panel, context is all, and there's an amazing backstory to the discussion we're going to have. And what I'm going to try and do is, as concisely as possible, tell this fairly extraordinary story. Firstly, we've been concerned with definitions in this conference, and a definition is a pretty important starting place here. So let me read one definition, what an NFT is. An NFT is a unique digital contract on the blockchain that records the ownership of a digital file of an artwork, or a meme, or a video, or pretty well anything. These tokens are traded and speculated using cryptocurrency. That's I think the sort of essence of these things. Now, 2 years ago, in 2021, we were in the group of NFT mania, particularly when this thing here sold for 69 million at Christie's. This is Everydays, which is a JPEG of all the drawings that the digital artist Beeple had done for 14 years. The interesting thing about it is that what made 69 million were not the original drawings, it was a JPEG of this collage of the drawings. And of course, I'm showing it on the screen now. You can access it freely on any phone, any computer, but of course, I don't have the JPEG that says I own this thing. It's a JPEG, that's what's sold. Okay, we'll get on to that in a minute. We'll kick that around, but that's what it was defined in the catalogue. In 2021, the market for NFTs was on fire. Overall sales reached 20.2 billion, according to CryptoSlate. Then in 2022, the market went nuclear. Sales reached 55 billion. Now, to give you a sense of perspective on that, the entire traditional art market is usually at tops about 65 billion. And that figure, of course, in 2022 would have included NFTs. So this was an enormous expansion of the market. And we had some extraordinary one-off prices. We can find it. This CryptoPunk, which is one of the very first editions of NFTs back in 2017, this particular CryptoPunk made 24 million in 2022. Almost 100,000 NFT collections were launched in 2022. The previous year, it had been 14,500. So the market became saturated, and there weren't really enough real buyers. Fascinatingly, it's been estimated that about 46% of all NFT sales in 2022 were what's called wash trades, where the seller and the buyer are the same entity, and the price is artificially inflated through this mechanism. One of the reasons there weren't enough buyers was the value of cryptocurrencies collapsed. In 2022, Ether, which is the main cryptocurrency used for NFTs, lost 2/3 of its value, and Tezos lost 3/4 of its value. The NFT market hasn't really recovered. If you look at CryptoSlam, which is one of the best sources of objective information on this, back in August 2021, daily sales reached 500 million. Yesterday, they were down to 20.4 million. Beeple's JPEG, we can go back to that, that has been split up by the buyer, Metakovan, who's a Singapore-based crypto speculator, for want of a better word. You set up a virtual museum on the metaverse, which you can visit, and you can see hundreds of these images. Now, the museum is pretty deserted when you visit it, but there are little ATM machines, virtual ATM machines everywhere, selling tokens, B20 tokens, which allows you to invest in this NFT on a fractional basis. Now, interestingly, in March 2021, when the market was at its height, those tokens were selling for $22. The value now is 13 cents. They're effectively valueless, like thousands and thousands of other NFTs that are out there in the market. They won't die, they won't go away because they're on the blockchain, but they're valueless. But fear not, if you have an unsellable NFT now, you can go to a company called Unsold, and they will buy it. And then you can declare it as a loss on your tax return, which is quite handy. So the NFT market, you can't really get away from this fact that it has crashed. But one positive thing to emerge out of it out of this wreckage is the resilience of digital art. Crypto Slate magazine, which isn't Freeze magazine, it's not a specialist art magazine, says there is a market for high-end artistic NFTs. And Art Blocks Curated, which is an NFT platform which showcases and sells some of the most ambitious art NFTs, that was the 4th most traded collection in 2022. And it's currently number 14, so it's still holding its own in this space. And generative artists like Michael, we'll get you to talk about what generative art is in a moment, who exploit the creative potential of algorithms, are the sort of rising stars in this space, I think we can say. Another is Tyler Hobbs. We go forward. This is a unique NFT from the Fidenza series. Now, it's sold for $442,000 at Christie's in February. So there is some life out there. And at the end of the day here, we'll have an opportunity to see some representative examples, including Michael's work, at the exhibition at the ARIA Gallery. Okay, so this has been a pretty wild ride. Given the dramatic decline in sales volumes and prices in the NFT space, I'm just wondering how you have adapted your projects and your business practice. How have you coped with the situation? Let's start with you, Audrey.
So I have a bit of a different perspective because I think TR Lab has always been art first. My family had founded Rock Band Art Museum in Shanghai back in 2010, and I actually only got into NFTs because I thought that it was a really exciting potential avenue for young people like myself to engage in art. And actually we found that the artists, foundations, and partners that we're talking to now, they haven't shied away from the potential of what's happening with this exciting technology because they understand that it's more than just financial data on a screen. There's so much out there about what the technology can do, and I think generative art is an amazing art form that had previously existed but was then highlighted by the technology. And we most recently worked with the Alexander Calder Foundation on an educational experience centered on the blockchain. And we were specifically asked to only release it after the market had dropped. Because I think that when we think about our target audience, we're thinking about people who have never had access, especially intimate access to art.
We'll talk about that
Yes.
specific strand in a moment. Michael, you were an interesting situation because you were the top-selling artist on Tezos, but you decided to keep the cryptocurrency, didn't you?
Yes, which was, in hindsight, a very bad idea. But I started to sell my work at the top of the curve. And it went down for 2 years. So what I sold in the beginning, I kept my income as cryptocurrency, and now it's like 20% of the value it was.
How did you adapt to this situation, though?
I didn't really adapt. I was just focused on the work, and I didn't have time to adapt. And now that the tax season is coming, I really need to fit in. And I don't know what to do. I have a lawyer, I have an accountant, and I don't know what to do.
So the accountants are doing the adapting?
Yeah, and nobody is capable of saying how this is going to be taxed at the moment. But yeah, big loss of value of this crypto income. If I had been more wise, I would have transformed this crypto
Which
currency.
people did virtually the day after, didn't he? He just cashed it into fiat dollars, didn't he?
But as an artist, you need to focus on making your work, your art. And the sale, they happen.
Yeah.
And then it's more from the collector's perspective that this decrease of value of the cryptocurrency is a real problem for investors. Okay. But the artists, they make some money on the primary sale, they get the royalty as well. So in the end, artists always win in this scheme, I guess.
Serena, it was interesting, I covered in 2022, there was an exhibition at Unit Gallery, which you were involved with, the company that was acting as an intermediary with Italian museums, using famous paintings to create NFTs, which was an interesting phase. How did that sort of pan out in the end?
Well, it's been an interesting journey, I must say, and one of the experiences I happened to curate and participate in is what you were saying. This exhibition that was done in London back in 2000 and last year, 22, and it was through this company called Cinello that was creating one-on-one replicas of museums' works through partnerships they've created with museums, national museums primarily. And those standards called DAW as digital artwork is a patent that they've created back in 2016, well before NFTs came to life, even though everyone else understood that they were NFTs, but they were not. So it was an interesting way for creating sustainability of bringing works outside of museums and creating kind of like impossible shows. So putting together works that are unmovable, and at the same time creating a sustainability for the museums itself.
But the price points of them were quite intimidating. I know, for example, there was a Leonardo da Vinci JPEG, and it was edition of what, 6 or 7 or something? And it was
9.
9, and the highest price was 500,000 euros?
No, less than that, 240.
250.
Yeah.
Did any of them sell at that price level?
There was an edition sold, yes.
Yeah,
one
okay.
of the 9, yes, yeah.
Okay.
To an Italian collector,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
So at the moment, people say, well, the market is corrected, the bubble's burst, the speculators are gone, we're now down to the really serious people, the serious artists. But one thing I find quite difficult to work out is the distinction between art NFTs and NFT collectibles. And where does art begin and end in this space, and when do the collectibles come in? Let's see if we can find let's go back. Why don't you start that, Michael? How do you think about this? When does art begin?
I consider myself that NFT, many artists would disagree with me, NFT is a medium. So when I create art for the NFT market, because there are so many components that are outside the art making itself, like the way it is collected, the way collectors engage in a sale, the mechanism of the sales themselves can be very creative. So I think the fact that this system of the blockchain allows to build something very different, to approach the art and the digital ownership, makes it a medium for the art. So even
well, let's simplify. We've got a crypto punk here.
Yeah, even for the crypto punk.
We're in Florence here. I always used to think that the crypto kitties and crypto punks back in 2017 were the sort of Cimabue and Giotto of NFTs. So we've got the Giotto of NFTs here. So I think let's have a bit of fun. And everyone has to do this. We're in Australia. Let's vote. Who thinks this is art and who thinks it isn't? Hands up.
It's an alien, so it must be art.
What do we got? Not really majority, is it? Right, okay.
But as soon as we ask the question, is it art or not, it probably is, I would say.
Why is that the case?
Well, because we ask the question, well, this is the proper of contemporary art, is asking the question, what is art?
Sure.
And so, and I strongly believe this is art because it's a completely new way of showing a piece of art and asking that question, is it art?
Okay.
So, and I think that, as I said, the blockchain allows so many new ways to look at a piece of art, to sell a piece of art.
Okay.
That it's art itself.
What do you think, Serena?
I think that's a very important word that we haven't mentioned yet, since we're talking about NFTs, which is community. So people came together mainly on the internet, on Twitter and other social media platforms. I know now the algorithms have changed, so people don't like them as much. But because there was a need of creating a real contact, direct contact between artists that were known within galleries or museums networks, to build their own network, to build their own community. And community, I think, is the key word that made this alien becoming art.
Can we talk a little bit about generative art? Because I think a lot of people might not know exactly what we're talking about here. Mike, you're a generative artist. What does that mean?
Oh, to make it simple, I create images with lines of code, programming code. So I write a program, which is a very handcrafted manner, and the end result is an image or a series of images. And there is a component of randomness. So when you collect one of these works, so you collect a possible output of an algorithm. And at the moment when you collect, a number is randomly generated, and it's going to be the deterministic seed of the image you're going to get. So the work of art, of a generative art, lies in the algorithm itself.
How much is the element of chance here? How does that word apply in the situation?
What do you mean?
The element of chance in the creative process.
Yeah, the chance is a great component of it. But, an algorithm is capable of making some variations around the central theme, the central work.
Sorry. Serena, I gather you were talking very interesting earlier about the application of this actually to poetry NFTs? Is that...
Yes, absolutely. We were saying, I mean, you made a great point about women artists in the space. There's always been a topic in museums and collections, of course, but I was actually noticing that I know more women in the NFT space than men, or people coming from various backgrounds. And to me, it's quite refreshing because something that is quite popular and sells well these days is poetry on the blockchain, created through the support of algorithms. So that is a group of women called Diverse Verse that is creating a number of exhibitions. You can find also a piece by Sasha Stiles in Rome, in Palazzo Cipolla, currently on show. And it's getting real, audience appreciation. Okay. So that's interesting. Another group of women came about called WOCA, Women of Crypto Art, and those people are actually connected throughout blockchain networks, communicating from different countries. So,
because we're responding to that
and they made
earlier...
a market for themselves.
Sorry. We're responding to that earlier point made in the earlier panel that, and I don't know how reliable the data is, but apparently there are just 5% women artists in producing NFTs. Now, what do you think of that, Audrey?
It's something that I've noticed, and we were talking about this just before it came up. But I think I have a different perspective because I'm not an artist, I'm not a curator. I run a tech platform that services artists and creators. And so when I think about what your question going back to art NFTs versus collectible NFTs, to me, the delineation lies in two ways. The first is, what is this NFT in existence to serve? Because we have released free NFTs that are badges for proof of participation on the blockchain that are not artworks, but they're there to serve as a proof point that you were there to experience the artwork. And I think you could call that a collectible NFT, but I don't feel like the line needs to be so clear if we know what the purpose is for. And the second thing that I think about is intellectual property, where I strongly believe in artists holding on to their intellectual property. And so that's one way that I use to differentiate between art and collectible NFTs. Okay. But going to the women question in particular, I was saying that I was at a crypto pizza meetup in New York last week, and there were about 50 people in the room, and I was the only woman. And I do think as a young woman in the space, I have noticed that it has been harder for us to promote female artists that we work with, and also it's been harder to find other female collaborators in the space.
Okay. I want to next discuss the whole issue of democratization, because NFTs have been perceived and written about as a really positive force for democratization in a very elitist art world. Has that been the case, or has it been a force for mass exploitation? Because lots of these editions have just been what are called rug pulls, where the person who put out the NFTs made a lot of money initially, and then the people who bought them are left with valueless tokens. But what are the positive democratization elements that have come across with NFTs? Serena, should we stop you?
Well, I think the main topic that I think it's interesting in that sense for NFTs is that it creates functionalities. Like, it's not art that is, shown on screen only, but you can create actions as collectors that you can perform in terms of creating in a collaborative way with artists and also with the rest of the community, which I think creates a democratic way of enjoying art. We've seen art now on public places like in New York, in London, and in different squares around the globe. And that's a way of showing your original work with a function. So we know artists that are unknown because we only know their wallet address, but they create this kind of connection between the public and what they create. So it's a collaborative way, it's a new way of producing, I think, ultra-contemporary artworks that are in contact with people, even if you don't know who's on the other side. So to me, that's a very democratic angle that make art more accessible, preserving the ownership.
And Michael, there's the whole element of price. I was talking to you about what do you price your works at, and you have works that are an edition of 1,000, and you can buy them for 10 euros,
yes.
Which is just non-existent in the mainstream.
Yeah, we talk a lot about NFTs with the huge numbers that we heard in the news, but actually you can enter NFTs with €1 if you want. And the principle of editions, meaning you produce an artwork, an image, for instance, and you can sell like 100 editions of that same image. So you can have 100 different collectors. Of course, the price is divided by this number of editions.
I can buy a work for a tenner from you, which is I'm going to do, which is marvelous. And it'll give me pleasure.
So I try to have a range of possibilities and prices. So editions with a large number, which are much cheaper, and more exclusive ones, all the way to one-on-ones, which are unique and only one person can purchase them. But
that's great.
I think about democratization is a really great thing to be able to purchase at low prices.
Audrey, we spoke about the Calder Foundation project and the way you're using NFTs very creatively as a tool in education to bring people in who previously might not have been interested in a major artist like Calder. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, for sure. So I think I'm personally less interested in applications like around the financing of NFTs or fractionalizing NFTs to democratize art. I think it's been co-opted in the word democratization in that way. For us, we think about it as, hey, this is the first time where anyone in the world, no matter where you're located, no matter your income level, no matter your connections within the traditional art world, can easily collect an art NFT. But then the problem comes with there are bad actors that are very easily able to collect these NFTs that are not thinking of them as artworks, but maybe more thinking about them as financial instruments.
Sure.
And so for us, everything that we did with Calder was playing against that idea. You would have to go through a 1 hour long quiz, including answering an essay question about how you thought of Calder's work, to even qualify you for a free NFT that then gave you access into the foundation, spaces like Calder's Studio in Roxbury, as well as a special artwork in collaboration with a digital artist named Raoul Marx. But what we found was that because we encouraged or force people in a way to study so much about the art and the artist before they collected or purchased anything. We found that there's not been a single listing on the secondary market for the NFTs, which I think is quite special, given that NFTs are so easily liquid.
So speculators don't like quizzes?
I suppose not. Not when they're
Well,
1 hour long.
That's great. One important issue that has been talked about and written about a lot is the carbon footprint of NFTs. And I think we don't want to go to, it will be discussed in probably one of the next panel actually after the coffee break. But what can we say about the concrete advances that have been made to reduce carbon emissions for NFTs? Michael, do you want to start?
Yeah, the blockchain started with Bitcoin, and then the favorite chain for NFTs is Ethereum, and they were based on the technology which was extremely consuming in terms of electricity, a technology named proof of work. And
could you explain? Proof of work is it's a competition between lots and lots of computers to produce the definitive contract.
All across the planet compete to validate a new block on the blockchain.
And proof of stake, by contrast?
Well, I'm not going to get into the details of that, but it's a million times more efficient.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Ethereum has made the move. It took them like 3 or 4 years to get to this point of switching to a proof of stake technology now. But some blockchains have it native, like Tezos, and this is why I choose this blockchain in the first place.
Yeah, yeah.
So
and that has
NFT,
a very low carbon footprint, doesn't it?
NFT doesn't consume more electricity than a tweet, for instance.
Okay, Serene?
Yeah, after the merge, which happened the last 15 September, if I'm not mistaken, that means the layer 2 Ethereum, that's what we're talking about now, became way more efficient, as Michael was saying, by a staking mechanism, where the consumption was reduced down to nearly 99%. Compared to layer 1. So that's definitely an improvement. So basically, if you're minting an NFT or buying an NFT right now, you're not really killing the planet, or as much as you would keep your refrigerator on all day. So you can compare it to that. On the contrary, what really happened is that gas fees went really, really high, which now to activate a contract will cost you nearly $200, $300, depending on what kind of work you want to create as an NFT. So I think that's been, up and downs with that.
Okay, the final question, the future of NFT art. We're now in a situation where it's emerged from the wreckage and interesting artists are being appreciated, they're making good prices. But what's the next phase? We've got Giotto here, but what's Botticelli going to look like? Michael, start with you. Just very briefly, what do you reckon?
It's a living Botticelli,
It's hard to say, but for sure the attention has switched to art more than speculation now. So I suppose that in the future, NFTs will be associated with good art rather than speculative.
Well, what about you, Audrey? What's the next stage for you? What would you like to see?
I think is for people to recognize all the different aspects of the technology, where I think people now, they only see it as, this is something that is relate to finance, something sold for this amount. But I think there's so much with the technology that can go towards highlighting legacy of amazing artists and also encouraging younger people, people of the TikTok generation to take their attention away from TikTok and into participating and learning and being rewarded for time and effort spent. So I'm excited for that narrative to shift.
20 seconds. Serena, what's Botticelli going to look like?
Blockchain is nothing new. We've been knowing this concept since 2016 and prior to that. So what I'm excited about is that museums, galleries, and people are opening up to new technologies since it's becoming way more accessible, and we're actually seeing these in collections and learning more about technology without being scared.
Okay, we're out of time, but one question. Does anyone Want to ask a question? Great, we've explained it all. Oh, sorry. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. I'm Katerina Nichitra. I'm a big fan of Serena and, of course, Tierra Labs. Anyways, what do you guys think about AI?
So
Very quickly.
we were actually ahead of the AI trend a little bit. We worked with an author, an AI expert named Lee Kai-Fu last year, and he had written a book called AI 2041, where there are 10 short stories on AI, and we collaborated and commissioned with 7 digital artists, including Joshua Davis, Brendan Dawes, to be inspired by the book and create artworks in correspondence with the book. And so I think that it's a very exciting field. I'm excited to follow how artists use AI as a technology to evolve. And I also think that it's a tool that much younger people are starting to use in day-to-day lives that is really going to affect how we communicate with each other and how we think.
Okay, that sums it up very well. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think we're now having a coffee break. Thank you.
Inspires and enriches everything that follows. Liwan is proud to be based in the same building as the first girls' school in Qatar.
بنات الدوحة هذه كانت روحي أحلى أيامي.
It draws from that heritage to offer designers a space where hard work, collaboration, imagination, artistic expression, and creativity can flourish like never before. Honor the past to celebrate the future. Liwan Design Studios and Labs.
متحف قطر الوطني نبض تراثنا.
It's all around us. Have you noticed? It can be that spark in your curiosity, or the desire to create something new, something only you could have brought to life. Maybe you felt it in the excitement of discovering extraordinary things, and in the sights that feed your imagination, that excite you for the future, that make you want to learn about the past. Over decades, Qatar Museums has nurtured art, culture, and education, bringing the world to Qatar and Qatar to the world. Because we understand that these are the things we live for.
شنو يلهمك عشان تبدع؟
La transformación. تجاربنا في الحياة.
Les couleurs. The conversation.
تاريخ.
Technology. The ambience.
الأشياء اللي حولي.
مطافي. تشوفون الإبداع في كل مكان.
A building is defined by its history. When that history is abundant, it inspires and enriches everything that follows. Liwan is proud to be based in the same building as the first girls' school in Qatar.
بنات الدوحة هذه كانت روحي، أحلى أيامي.
It draws from that heritage to offer designers a space where hard work, collaboration, imagination, artistic expression, and creativity can flourish like never before. Honor the past to celebrate the future. Liwan Design Studios and Labs.
متحف قطر الوطني، نبض تراثنا.
It's all around us. Have you noticed? It can be that spark in your curiosity, or the desire to create something new, something only you could have brought to life. Maybe you felt it in the excitement of discovering extraordinary things, and in the sights that feed your imagination, that excite you for the future, that make you want to learn about the past. Over decades, Qatar Museums has nurtured art, culture, and education, bringing the world to Qatar and Qatar to the world. Because we understand that these are the things we live for.
شنو يلهمك عشان تبدع؟
La transformación. تجاربنا في الحياة.
Les couleurs. The conversation.
تاريخ.
Technology. The ambience.
الأشياء اللي حولي.
مطافي. تشوفون الإبداع في كل مكان.
A building is defined by its history. When that history is abundant, it inspires and enriches everything that follows. Liwan is proud to be based in the same building as the first girls' school in Qatar.
بنات الدوحة هذه كانت روحي أحلى أيامي.
It draws from that heritage to offer designers a space where hard work, collaboration, imagination, artistic expression, and creativity can flourish like never before. Honor the past to celebrate the future. Liwan Design Studios and Labs.
متحف قطر الوطني نبض تراثنا.
It's all around us. Have you noticed? It can be that spark in your curiosity, or the desire to create something new, something only you could have brought to life. Maybe you felt it in the excitement of discovering extraordinary things, and in the sights that feed your imagination, that excite you for the future, that make you want to learn about the past. Over decades, Qatar Museums has nurtured art, culture, and education, bringing the world to Qatar and Qatar to the world. Because we understand that these are the things we live for.
شنو يلهمك عشان تبدع؟
La transformación. تجاربنا في الحياة.
Les couleurs. The conversation.
تاريخ.
Technology. The ambience.
الأشياء اللي حولي.
مطافي تشوفون الإبداع في كل مكان.
A building is defined by its history. When that history is abundant, it inspires and enriches everything that follows. Liwan is proud to be based in the same building as the first girls' school in Qatar.
بنات الدوحة هذه كانت روحي أحلى أيامي.
It draws from that heritage to offer designers a space where hard work, collaboration, imagination, artistic expression, and creativity can flourish like never before. Honor the past to celebrate the future. Liwan Design Studios and Labs.
قدم قلبي بحر
متحف قطر الوطني نبض تراثنا.
It's all around us. Have you noticed? It can be that spark in your curiosity, or the desire to create something new, something only you could have brought to life. Maybe you felt it in the excitement of discovering extraordinary things, and in the sights that feed your imagination, that excite you for the future, that make you want to learn about the past. Over decades, Qatar Museums has nurtured art, culture, and education, bringing the world to Qatar and Qatar to the world. Because we understand that these are the things we live for.
شنو يلهمك عشان تبدأ؟
La transformación. تجاربنا في الحياة.
Les couleurs. The conversation.
تاريخ.
Technology. The ambience.
الأشياء اللي حولي.
مطافي تشوفون الإبداع في كل مكان.
A building is defined by its history. When that history is abundant, it inspires and enriches everything that follows. Liwan is proud to be based in the same building as the first girls' school in Qatar.
بنات الدوحة هذه كانت روحي أحلى أيامي.
It draws from that heritage to offer designers a space where hard work, collaboration, imagination, artistic expression, and creativity can flourish like never before. Honor the past to celebrate the future. Liwan Design Studios and Labs.
قدم قلبي بحر
متحف قطر الوطني نبض تراثنا.
It's all around us. Have you noticed? It can be that spark in your curiosity, or the desire to create something new, something only you could have brought to life. Maybe you felt it in the excitement of discovering extraordinary things, and in the sights that feed your imagination, that excite you for the future, that make you want to learn about the past. Over decades,
If everyone could just take your seats quickly, please. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. Thank you.
شنو يلهمك عشان تبدأ؟
La transformación. تجاربنا في الحياة.
Les couleurs. The conversation.
تاريخ.
Technology. The ambience.
الأشياء اللي حولك.
مطافي تشوفون الإبداع في كل مكان.
A building is defined by its history. When that history is abundant, it inspires and enriches everything that follows. Liwan is proud to be based in the same building as the first girls' school in Qatar.
بنات الدوحة هذه كانت روحي أحلى أيامي.
It draws from that heritage to offer designers a space where hard work, collaboration, imagination, artistic expression, and creativity can flourish like never before. Honor the past to celebrate the future. Liwan Design Studios and Labs.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our final session of the day. My name is Matthew Anderson. I'm the European Culture Editor of the New York Times, and this afternoon we're going to be talking about art and the climate crisis. So originally the topic was conceived as public art, digital art, and the climate crisis. Unfortunately, Georgia Albertino, who was supposed to join us from the Google Cultural Institute, she won't be with us as she unfortunately has COVID at the moment. So we probably won't steer the topic so much in the direction of the digital art, which is obviously an area of expertise for her. But I also don't see any need for us just to restrict ourselves to talking about public art either. I think we can have a kind of wide-ranging conversation on how the climate crisis intersects with the world of art. It's obviously one of the main ideas that we're all coming to terms with, the fact that the climate is changing, and that manifests itself on all levels of intellectual life, and the arts, of course, is one of the main places in which that is manifested. So there have also been several big high-profile commissions in recent years in which art is used as a kind of instrument of consciousness raising, or it is put in a public place that asks us to think very specifically about the issue of the climate. And I want us to think about how sort of effective that is as a way of asking those questions, but also maybe is that the job of art to do something like that? So I thought I'm lucky that we are joined by Hans Ulrich Obrist, the director of the Serpentine Gallery, and the Brazilian artist Ernesto Neto, who makes large sculptural installations, and whose work always, probably even from a time before we were aware of the dire state of the climate, has always invited us to ask questions about our position as humans in terms of the natural world. Ernesto, for people who aren't familiar with your practice, maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about how you work and how the issue of the climate manifests itself in your work.
Good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to be here, sitting in this chair with my friend Hans and Matthew, that is doing a great job here. This fantastic room full of, there is some dragons I saw there, and I was enjoying that. And I had been here, first place I come to Italy, I think 36 years ago when I was 23, was in Florence. And I arrived here, I went to the Dome. The Dome was easy to get in and out. It's a great dome, fantastic, this piece of church, in my opinion, the best one I have seen in my life. And I saw it yesterday again, and it was strong to see it close to the city, very organic, the cities around that. So it's like there is a dance in between the city and the dome, and this big amount of people. I begin to think about this time, it's like 36 years, and how a lot of things had changed in the art world, in everything that is going on. So my practice is I am a sculptor. I do sculpture pretty much thinking about the body and how it's to be where we are, to feel our body, because we are very much attached to the head, in my opinion. And this body begin to grow. I work very much with textile. I begin to try to understand what is a textile, and I begin to do crochet to understand the knitting of it. And then from crochet, we begin to do some sculptures that we can touch, the sculptures, which is quite interesting for the relation that we had with the last talk about the NFT, because touching for me is something very important to feel ourselves in the world, to pick up a glass of water and drink the water and feel this water get inside of us and breathe. And then by this thing, working very much with gravity, then there is, from touching, people begin to take their shoes and get in. I like very much this idea to take our shoes to get somewhere. And I just came from Thailand, and it was incredible there, because there is a lot of temples, in Chiang Rai, and the temples are not really big, They are sometimes quite small in relation to the big dome here. But everyone, before they get in, they take their shoes out, then they go up in a staircase where there is 2 serpents named Naka. And they get in. Normally, sometimes there is a carpet there. And all of them, my friends, curators and artists, everyone go in their knee and they make a blessing, a regard, I don't know, a saudação, salute to the big Buddha sitting down there, with their eye closed in a position of meditation. And this was very beautiful. So in this situation of taking their shoes, I begin to make sculptures that invite people to get in on these big bodies. Like I was thinking very much the possibility of getting inside of our own body, because we have all these visions of inside of the body and all the science that is showing our body through photographies, videos, and then how is to be inside of a body. And then I begin to think of how is to be inside of the body of Mother Nature. And it reminds when I saw the sculpture for the first time in Mexico, the Mexican sculptures at the Anthropological Museum, and I saw these sculptures being more stone, more heavy than the pure stone, While in my education, I thought that the Egyptian wants to make the sculpture to become a kind of gas, while the Greek wanted to move. And then I begin to realize that this knowledge comes from a very dry ambience that's a desert, or even Greece is quite dry, even though there's a lot of water, but it's very much water, stones, and not so much vegetation. And they, in Yucatan, they come from a very big forest, And then I remember that anthropologist Eduardo Viveiros de Castro, I read his saying that for the indigenous, the world is too much populated, you know. And I realized that in Brazil, where I come from, Rio de Janeiro, there is a forest there, you know, named Serra do Mar, Inharã. For the Guarani, they call Inharã. And so we are educated in, symbiosis was always very important to me, symbiosis, mutualism. You have a tree there, and you have a lot of ants and birds and other plants on this tree. It's a lot of happening in one tree in the middle of the forest, you know. A lot of things going on. And then, but at the same time, the education we have, it kind of Western education, is education that comes from the dry land, you know, the relation between the figure and the background. In the former times of Greece, Egypt, or whatever, arriving here, I don't know exactly how was this mix, but from this Renaissance and everything was very related to the relation between the figure and the background was very empty, while there is very full of events. And now the society that we live is the society of the full. When you go out and you move around the dome, you see a lot of people. It's people everywhere. Here in this room is a lot of people, and then you have the NFT and you have the internet. So we really live in the time of the full. New York, London, you know, São Paulo. It's a lot of people in the place, you know. So we are really, then our body full of, you know, we are 3 billions of ourselves, cells with our DNA, and 1 quadrillion of foreign cells, bacteria. I think there was one guy who told about the museum that the bacteria has an opinion there, and I think this is fantastic, you know. It's difficult to know how to deal with that, but that's what the shamans are talking about that we are missing.
I mean, it seems like you're particularly talking about sort of shamanic knowledge or whatever. You're bringing ideas which come from outside Western art discourses into gallery settings or into public art works. Hans Ulrich, maybe I could bring you in on there. You have, I don't think anyone has as good an overview of what is going on in the institutions, in the biennials, in the fairs. Is that something that you see as a trend or as a tendency across the arts, that people are, in the face of a climate crisis which has perhaps been caused by science, technology, economic advancement, people are increasingly turning away to other systems of thought and other types of knowledge?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew, and thanks to Art for Tomorrow. It's great to be back at this wonderful conference. I think that in a way there are really major shifts happening. One of the shifts, I think, it started already 15 years ago that Gustav Metzger came every day, the legendary Gustav Metzger, the late Gustav Metzger, came every day in London to our office, and he said, you know, we have to address the extinction crisis. And really out of that grew the Serpentine's work, by working with artists on that. And of course, in a way, the question is also, how can we go beyond the short-termism? I think it's interesting, Roman Kachanik wrote this book, How to Be a Good Ancestor, and he sort of says that we need to somehow liberate ourselves from short-termism and think about a longer durational dimension, not la longue durée, as Brodel would say, a longer durational dimension. And I think that means, of course, also that and not only in the art world, I think in all the creative fields, that we need to think about new formats. And, you know, when I visit studios, and more and more artists are actually less interested in exhibitions, but more interested in gardens, or maybe even in farms. I mean, it's an interesting moment at the moment. Yinka Shonibare, as an artist, started a farm in Nigeria. Otobong Nkanga is starting a farm in Italy. You have Gianfranco Baruchello, who has done that, you know, since the 70s. I think that means a lot, you know, in a way, in terms of what we need to take that into consideration, these long durational formats. I think the other thing, we've just, of course, with Back to Earth at the Serpentine over the last couple of years tried to address that. And one example is a film by Mantia Diawara. And it's a very fascinating story where the Mali-born artist and filmmaker Mantia Diawara, who moved to Senegal, is basically working on a film where he works in a community in Senegal which used to be a fishing community. But because of the extinction, there is no more fish, and now the community basically survives by collecting pebbles. But the collecting of the pebbles creates further environmental damage. So basically Mantia moved into this community, lives in a house there, and not only does he do a film, but he actually works with the community to find other economies so that they no longer have to, collect the pebbles. And I thought it was very interesting. So many wonderful things Amos Gittai said, about an hour ago here on stage about art and what art can be. And I think he said something that, it cannot be fast. We can't change reality immediately. So I think that idea also of a new slowness.
That was also a quote which interested me as well, the idea that art doesn't change reality. But I think in terms of commissions which are for public artworks, which are specifically to ask us to think about something or to change our mind, that's in a way almost a kind of a didactic use of art in terms of asking us to see reality a different way as a result of it. But I mean, Hans Ulrich, what do you think in terms of being a successful artwork as well as a successful contribution to the debate about climate, that artists need perhaps to stand back from being didactic or from telling people that they should be changing their behavior or from doing something in particular?
Yeah, I think the idea that the artwork in that sense is open is important, and there can always be, many readings of it. But I think, in a way, what art can really do, also in relation to the environment, became clear to me actually last year when on the island when on the island of San Giacomo with Patrizia Sandretore Baudengo, we organized this performance of a young Brazilian artist who is also a friend of Ernesto called Jota Mombassa, And Jota Mombassa created an experience which for the few hundred people who were present there was completely transformative, because basically it's called the tired watering, and the artist created an imagery of sinking, the floods are coming, an imagery of sinking, and that was really a way of rehearsing the end of the world. It was an emotional release, which created an incredibly inclusive planetary, sensitivity. And I think everybody took something else away from it. It wasn't didactic at all, but it was an incredible experience.
Ernesto, in terms of when you are, as an artist, when you're making, say for instance the commission that you took in Qatar for the public artwork, how did you approach that, knowing that it was meant to be seen by a large public and that there was a specific intention behind it, that it was specifically asking people to think on a particular topic? How does that then guide your practice as an artist?
In the piece from Qatar, Slug Turtle. Então, Slug Turtle is a piece in the desert, and it's very far. It's quite close to the piece of Olafur, but there is no much sign, so it's kind of a little bit hidden, even though it's near the heritage there. And it's a piece. It's a structure as it was some goalposts, like making an octagonal, and from that place there is a kind of skin, and this skin is the body of this slug turtle, who has a kind of head facing a tree. This tree is a tree. The desert there is it's incredible. It's not this desert like dunes, but it's a flat desert. There is some kind of plants there is some dishes upside down, and these plants get out from a center, going radius to the side, and they are quite strong body, full of thorns, and then there is some bushes out full of thorns, and there is this tree. This tree is a tree that goes up like that, and if it leaves, goes and make a kind of a cabana that stays, for example, from that chair to the end there, and you open it because it goes all the way to the flare, to the ground. You can open it and get in there, and you can sit there. They use the farmers, the shippers, the guy who take care of the ships. They used to take a rest there, so it's really incredible, this tree. So this sculpture is facing this tree, and in the center of this sculpture, there is the sphere, a sphere that is the representation of the planet Earth, our planet, made in a oficina Brenan, from a great artist from Recife who had worked very much with ceramic. He's already passed away. This oficina is becoming a cultural center too. In fact, I'm going to have an exhibition there in the end of this year in middle bottom, and there is some cracks on it, you know. And so the idea was that you have this sphere, very dense, made by this old clay tradition, and in the surface of the earth. So we have the earth and the image of the earth, and these sittings around. We can sit down there, give our hands, dance. And at some point when we were putting it up, we have the sun going down there, the moon going up here, the sphere earth here. So there is this kind of, it's a place to pray, you know, a place to dance, a place to sing, for this earth, for this beautiful planet that we are, that is really much incredible, and we are here and we don't know exactly what we are doing with this planet, because there is a kind of, we become uncomfortable with ourselves. Because, for example, 1 year, I don't know, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, we didn't need a telephone. Now we cannot live without that. And this is becoming more and more, you know. It's something that is very interesting. It's like a Narcissus lake, you know. We look here, we are fascinated to that, but we don't know how to get out of that, because we are becoming more and more dependent on it. When in reality, we are not so dependent on it. You know, we can live without that. But who can live without that now? Honestly, I can't. If I change my life completely, I can. But in this world that I live, you need to have a cell phone. You know?
Hans-Ulrich, you've done interesting work at the Serpentine with public art, which actually interacts with the phone as well in a kind of augmented reality kind of sense. Why don't you tell us about, and some of that has also had a kind of climate overtone to it, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually, even if we don't focus that much on technology today, I think it is interesting to address it, no? Because in a way, there's a great possibility of consciousness raising actually through the use of technology, how actually digital technology can in a way foster attention, no, to the natural world. And we did that, for example, with Jakob Knut-Steensen, who created a deep forest, and that was actually in Kensington Gardens. The Serpentine Gallery is in London, is in Kensington Gardens, and of course the AR piece wasn't limited just to the gallery, it became the entire park. Yeah, there was a real narrative there about an ecological future which people could experience with the phone. Another example would be, and it's often, you know, mixed reality. I think it's often works which are both analog, physical, but also digital. So for example, we invited also Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg. That's an example for, you know, an artist who wanted to do a garden rather than an exhibition. So we invited Alexandra to do a pollinator garden in Kensington Garden, and that was AI assisted. So basically with an AI help, Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg created a garden from the perspective of the pollinators. So this is really what is useful for pollinators. It's for the bees and for other pollinators, and can then of course also be seen, you know, by all of us in the park. So that would be another example. And then of course there is video games. I mean, I think it's really interesting. Last year, for the first time, a third of the world population played video games, and that makes video games bigger than the field of music and cinema combined. And of course, it's a moment where more and more artists use that medium of the video game. And again, to come back to Brazil, there's this young generation around Gabriel Massan, and we're working actually with Gabriel on a video game which is exploring Black indigenous Brazilian experience. And of course, if you think about environment and ecology, you know, the possibility also for artists to do something with, you know, mainstream games is a possibility to reach 100 or 150 million people. I mean, we did a project with Fortnite and the Cute last year, you know, and it reached in 2 weeks on the landing page 150 million people. So there's a huge potential there to, you know, to just reach out, I would say. So lots of different projects, but often mixed reality.
Yeah. We've got time for a question or two from the floor, if there are any. No, but if not, I want to ask you, Hans-Ulrich, we've been talking a lot about how the climate affects the content of the arts, but as someone who leads an institution, I think there's a growing awareness that the way that art museums, institutions run is also itself kind of quite polluting, carbon intensive, and that we can't, it's not good enough just to put on programs which talk about the climate, but also that we need to take actions in terms of how we run our institutions and organize them. And I wondered if you could say a bit about how that is affecting your thinking at the Serpentine.
No, thank you for that question. And of course, Andreas raised it also earlier today. It's a big carbon footprint of museum spaces which has to be reduced. And I think there are many different steps we are taking. First of all, of course, as always, it comes out of collaboration with artists. So at the moment, we are working with Thomas Saraceno on a project where Thomas will switch off the air conditioning for the summer. So this summer from June to October, there won't be air conditioning during his exhibition. He's also positioning actually a series of solar panels on the roof, and the videos will only work through that. So the solar energy will empower the videos. Of course, another really important aspect is not to always throw out walls. This idea of building walls and then destroying them is also not sustainable. So the idea of recycling and upcycling previous exhibition designs is a great potential that artists can actually react to previous designs and recycle them and create something new. I would say another aspect is, of course, also to keep exhibitions longer. There is no reason one would set up a complex exhibition and then keep it for 6 weeks. No? So that it's again la longue durée, longer duration would be another aspect. And then another thing is, of course, that one can bundle, transports. We did a retrospective of the Haitian French painter Hervé Telemaque in his 80s, and basically many of his works are in French museums and collections. So we decided not to have any loans from overseas, not to have any loans from outside France, but just to bundle everything there is in France in one lorry, and so that's lots of possibilities.
Great, thank you so much, Hans Ulrich, and thank you, Ernesto. That's all we've got time for today. And now we're going to actually go and see some art. Kim is going to tell us about the next part of the day. Thank you.
Matt. Thank you, Matt and Ernesto and Hans Ulrich. Yes, so now we will have a little treat. We get to go to the Aria Art Gallery, where we have a special exhibition, a digital art exhibition. So it'll be a perfect segue from these two panels that you've heard this afternoon. It's called Reconciliation with the Living, and it's digital art on the subject of biodiversity, supported by UNESCO and curated by the very talented Benjamin Benita, who is here with us today and will be at the opening. And then after that, there are some experiential events that you hopefully have already signed up for. Two of them, the tour of Christian Levitt's home will leave from in front of the gallery, as well as the Massimo Listri Foundation. The private visit of the Old Silk Workshop, however, will leave from in front of the St. Regis. So if you're going on that, you need to be back there at, actually probably might have time for a quick visit to the exhibition, then come back to leave for that tour. So. And also, a reminder, tomorrow morning we start at 9:30. Please try to arrive at least 10 minutes or so before so we can start on time. Then we won't have to cut your coffee breaks. Thanks very much to everybody, and see you later this afternoon and tomorrow.